with Nike. We have Michael Ehrlich, who's the Senior Director and Brand Communications at Fox Sports News. And we have Scott Gwartz. He's the Director of Corporate Partnerships with Los Angeles Clippers. And your moderator today is a huge supporter of CIS, Mr. David Meltzer with Sports One Marketing. We are looking forward to hearing all about their different careers and their journey to where they've come. Let's get started.
There. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you and see you now.
Perfect. Well, we'll get right started. I know we're on a tight schedule. My name is Dave Meltzer, co-founder of Sports One Marketing with Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon. Previous to that, I ran the most notable sports agency in the world, Lee Steinberg Sports and Entertainment. The number one question, believe it or not, that I hear is the description of what you do in sports. I think I have an old saying, in order to work in sports, you have to understand to be more interested than interesting, because we have movies, TV, all types of perceptions of what the actual positions are like. So the first questions I'd like to ask the panel, and maybe I'll start with Bo, is Bo, can you just describe your job of what it actually is?
Morning. So thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate it. I think for me, as I think about kind of my day-to-day and what my job is, it's really the idea of taking kind of our product and athletes' stories and trying to authenticate it in a really dynamic way in the city that I'm in, which is Los Angeles. So, if you think about a shoe or apparel or just a piece of item, it's just without the innovations, without those stories, it's just a piece of item. But when we are able to authenticate it through the lens of an artist, a photographer, or somebody that's locally connected to the streets in LA, it gives us an opportunity to kind of take what that product is intended to be and combine it with a kind of organic story that's already happening in the city, and it just takes it beyond. So that's kind of my job, is to be an authenticator in the city.
A great authenticator and storyteller. Let's move on and see, Scott, can you also describe what you do with corporate partnerships with the Clippers?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Scott Gwartz. I'm the Director of Corporate Partnerships with the LA Clippers. And our group is tasked with driving sponsorship revenue, corporate partnership revenue for the Clippers, for the organization. And it's pretty black and white, albeit there is a little gray to it. We're not always tasked with getting the most money out of deals. To us, it's also about finding the right partners, the right relationships, the right people to work with, even if it's taking less money through an opportunity or a category or a brand. And we are out, depending on the time of year, because my day-to-day is a bit, there's some seasonality to it, but for the most part, we're tasked with bringing in new sponsors for the team and renewing the current deals that we have in place.
Awesome, thank you. And Mike, I know you're here as well. We worked together for a long time. Talk about the brand communication side at Fox.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me, and for David for hosting this panel, and for all of you attendees spending your Saturday morning and afternoon with us. Not like you're hopefully going anywhere else, but we appreciate you spending the time with us. But yeah, so from a brand communication side, I mean, regardless of what job I have or what company that I work for, I've worked for the brand side at Adidas, I've worked on the athlete side at a few different sports agencies, and now on the media side at Fox Sports. I think the role that I've always taken is really a brand builder and a storyteller. And I think, for all the attendees as well, I think that is sort of a role that you all should be taking in your own narrative crafting in your own career development, even at an early age in middle and high school. And I think today's landscape in particular with social and digital, we all have the opportunity to be our own content creators and curators and to really drive our own personal narrative. And I think professionally, that's what I'm doing at Fox Sports, specifically on the digital side. I'm really spending each and every day, not only promoting our talent and our content, but really driving a unique narrative for each of our sports verticals that ladder up to this sort of on-air personality as well.
That's awesome. And I think as a little backdrop into the brand and marketing side, I always say it's great to be a storyteller, but also a lesson sharer. So I think, there's a lot of lessons of value that we have in corporate communications and branding, marketing, sponsorship, advertisement as well. And I think going into the next generation of digital marketing, digital content, it's really fun to have Anna here so you can kind of get a new perspective from some of the traditional companies like Nike's, the Clippers, and Fox. Here we have Overtime, which is a great company, and wondered if you could kind of explain events and the marketing director at Overtime, what specifically do you do?
Sure. Can you guys see me?
We can.
Okay, awesome. Well, my name is Anna. I'm the head of experiential marketing and events for Overtime. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Overtime, Overtime is sports for the next generation. So we create content specifically for Gen Z, and we are a media company. We also have a lifestyle arm, and my particular job at Overtime is similar to what Michael and what folks have been talking about. Is I think marketing is storytelling, and I'm able to tell stories through actual experiences. So I create events, produce events, and help to articulate what Overtime is for people, sort of bringing our content from the screen to real life.
That's awesome. Well, one of the most important questions is people want to know, how do we get our jobs? So stay there, Anna, for a second, because, I was blessed to be in technology when I started. In fact, I would say if you reverse engineer my career, and a lot of young people who want to work in sports, want to be big sports agents, or want to have Hall of Fame quarterbacks as their partners in marketing and media companies with TV shows, movies, all the things I've gotten to do. But it's ironic because my career, if you engineer it or reverse engineer it, started as a lawyer in oil and gas and in the internet, and then with content and wireless proxy servers and CEO of the world's first smartphone. Deep into my 30s did I really get myself into the profession of sports, but I was a client and I understood the business issues. So it would be great if each of you, starting with Anna, if you could kind of describe how'd you end up at Overtime?
Sure. Well, I always knew that I wanted to work in sports. So I have been blessed to be able to work in this industry since I graduated from college. And when I was in college, really made the conscious decision to try to learn as much as I could about the industry. So knowing that I wanted to work in sports, I think is great, but you have to know where you're going to fit best and how you can apply your skills to add value, right, to the industry. I'm a horrible athlete. I could never play anything. So I knew I wasn't going to be on the court or on the field, but I love people. I love just interacting with folks. And I thought if I could figure out a way to be in sports, to be able to interact with people, I'd be happy, but I didn't know what that was. So my very first internship actually was with Michael on this panel. We were interns at the Lakers together. We were PR interns. And I learned a ton about working for a team and being in the front office of a sports organization, being the only female intern, just how to really navigate that industry and show up and be confident in your skills and your skill set, which is something that I'd say to all the young women here. Just be confident in your skill set, show up, provide value, and you'll be able to really carve your path. So I've jumped around a lot, from working for agencies to working for a professional sports team. I worked in the NFL for a while in community relations. I worked in collegiate athletics for the Pac-12. But really for me, my two passion points are community. How can I leverage industry sports to bring so many people together? How can we leverage that to make a positive impact on the greater community is something that's really important to me. And also, like I said, people, communications, and experiences. So It's a windy road, and I would also just say, don't think that you have to have a set destination. I think it's great to explore, to experiment, and hopefully you'll find something that fits and that works for you. And for me, thankfully, I've landed at Overtime.
That's awesome. I think specifically how you develop those skills, knowledge with the desire that you had to work in sports, and then kind of just angled and keep angling towards what you want. And I see that as a great progression as you move towards your career or your dream job within the context of a career in sports. I'm going to work my way backwards. So Michael, maybe we got a little prelude that you were an intern with the Lakers with Anna. Maybe you could share with us how you ended up where you're at.
Yeah, it's funny to come full circle. We discovered that we were going to be on this panel the other night during our practice sessions. That was a nice surprise. I won't tell you how long ago it was to hopefully not date us, but yeah, I mean, for me, it's a similar path. I mean, I always knew I wanted to work in sports, but I didn't know in what aspect or in what function. So throughout college, you know, I actually came into college at USC not knowing what I wanted to major in. So I really took the time to explore different paths, explore different studies. Ultimately, I declared as an American Studies and Ethnicity major, which really has nothing to do with sports. And whenever that comes up in a conversation, people are always asking me, well, what does that exactly mean? And I said, I was able to pick and choose the best of what my school had to offer to really create and curate a robust and diverse scholastic experience for myself, really thinking and focusing on critical thinking, communication, writing. And I think for me, I was able to supplement that with sports industry internships. As Anna mentioned, we interned together at the Lakers. And I think, you know, for all the high school students out there, for all the college students, you know, it's really less about what you're doing in the classroom and what you're doing to supplement that with everything else outside of the world. Focus your studies, you know, even if you don't know necessarily what function of an industry, not even sports, but even a specific industry that you want to explore, really leverage the time on campus to not only get that education, but to really supplement it with industry experience. And for me, I started my career going down that sports agent path. And after about 1.5 years, I knew for a fact that I did not want to be a sports agent. And I think as I look back on my career, figuring out what I didn't want to do was probably more valuable than figuring out what I did want to do. And I really enjoyed the athlete storytelling and brand building perspective and really focusing on PR, social media, content, and digital. So I was able to take an experience that I might not have necessarily enjoyed and figuring out, all right, I don't want to go down that path, but I really like this aspect. Especially in the sort of world and landscape that we're living in right now, your first job is not going to be your last job. And way back in the day when I was in high school, my college counselor, who was also my defensive coordinator in football and my AP English teacher, he told me at that time, years ago, that the average American changes careers 8 times, not jobs, but careers. And, you know, that reminded me of David's story about where he started his career. And I think, you know, as you're starting your careers, don't get discouraged if your first job is not what you really want to do, but get your foot in the door, learn what you like, but more importantly, learn what you don't like and take those lessons and apply that to your next move. And, you know, it's not going to be your last.
That's awesome advice. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it as well. Let's go back to Bo. So many people want to work for Nike. I was blessed to have a roommate of mine that worked for Nike. And I was always amazed when people realized what he did. They would say, oh my God, I love Nike. I wear Nikes. It's like saying, oh yeah, I breathe air as well. Anyway, Bo, why don't you talk about how you angled your way? By the way, that friend is Jeff Green, who you probably know. But
oh, nice. Yeah.
I
think it starts with being passionate about breathing air to start out with. But I think so many stories, so many of the amazing previous stories, I think it's hard to think about this as you're coming out of school, but it's just like, it's more about the journey than the actual destination. And I know a lot of people say that, and, you know, even when people told me that, I would shake my head and just kind of tell them that, you know, that's not it for me. But I think it starts with just having a vision for yourself and trying to figure out how to get there, right? So for me, when I was coming out of college, I went to college in Ohio, and I played football in college, right? So my last college football game ever was a Division I AA national championship, right? And so that was, for me, I was good with sports. You know, I'd gone through all the ups and downs, all the injuries, whatever. And I think, like, during college, what I did specifically was say, hey, I know that I want to be in digital media and marketing, right? I studied marketing in college, but I wanted to be specifically in an elevated, very digital space. And so in college, I took a few internships, and I purposely did that to make sure they all had different industries and were separate. So I did one that was more specifically traditionally marketing focused, one that was more on the sales, heavy sales numbers side, and then another one that was more on this experimental digital side. And what I found out was I hated sales because it didn't match kind of the things that I was looking for, and the thing that I was really good at, which is storytelling and bringing different people together and bringing a campaign to life. So what I did was, as soon as I graduated, actually prior to graduation, and I would advise anybody on this panel or that's listening in here to do the same thing. I was in college and I said, what are the networks around me that can potentially help me get to my destination? So I met with our athletic director, who connected me with somebody who was at Nike at the time. After I graduated, I said, Ohio isn't it for me. And what I did was I left without a job, right? I just said, what is the city that I can go to that I can start to pick up some of these things? I ended up in Chicago, hustled for 6 months, ate oatmeal every day because I had no money. And then I caught on with a place that was a digital marketing company. I ended up randomly managing a digital production studio in downtown Chicago, learning everything about content and in that space. And this had nothing to do with Nike at the time, right? So I'm picking up these badges along the way. Nike finds out about it. I get brought on to do a project. And then, long story short, I guess I kind of end up where I am now. So again, journey, not destination, vision, and follow that through.
We'll lead right into the last question with you, Bo, as well, because, I always teach kind of enjoying the consistent, everyday, persistent, without quit pursuit of your own potential, your own dreams. And, it don't necessarily start where you want to end, of course, but part of that is having a desire. As a college football player, one of the common denominators I see in successful people is this ability to be what they must be. And they're not sacrifices, they're investments in themselves. And when you were talking about, eating oatmeal, I'm thinking in my head, this guy's invested in himself. There are no sacrifices because he's pursuing his own potential, what his dreams were. But what advice would you have for high school students who want to pursue a career in sports?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think when I was thinking about this, I remembered the advice that one of my very early mentors gave me. And so what he said was, and I had no clue what he was talking about at the time, but I understand it. He said, howitzer, mosquito, right? And I never understood that. Every time a project or anything came up, he would just say howitzer, mosquito. And for those who don't know, a howitzer is basically like a large, oversized, dumb, big hammer. And then, the size of mosquitoes like that big. So what he was telling me was, whatever project you get or whatever assignment you get, it doesn't matter if it's as big as a mosquito, you kill it with a howitzer. Meaning you bring every single thing that you have to the table, regardless of the project. And sometimes you just have to overdo it. And what that's going to do is set you up to get more and more and more projects that eventually lead you to the ultimate project that you want, right? So that would be my advice. It doesn't matter how small something is. Make sure you bring your all to it and try to do your very best, because you never know where those little things become medium things, those medium things become bigger things, and those bigger things become large things, right? But you have to be consistent throughout.
That's awesome. Scott, I skipped over you, my friend, so you can kind of combine both of those questions. Love your journey. Love your journey plus the advice along the way, if that sounds fair. I apologize. This is the first time I've ever done anything on TV, so I'm a little bit nervous. Sorry about that.
No worries. I thought I said something wrong earlier. Look, I can relate to everything that Bo, Michael, and Anna have said. To add to the journey part of it, I'll say, there's ups and downs throughout the process, and one thing that has helped me along the way is I try not to get too high on the highs and too lows on the lows and stay even keeled, because you're gonna get a lot of rejections. I'm in sales, I get a lot of no's, but you just gotta work your way through it and stay even keel. As far as advice to high school kids, 20 years ago, you could say, I want to work in sports, and certainly you can still say it, but now it's too broad. There's too many people that want to do it. So I think, and I know this sounds, this will sound like a dichotomy, but you want to have a focus, or you want to have some idea of what route you want to go in sports, whether that's marketing, sales, community, branding. There's operations, there's PR, there's so many different genres, and you want to at least have an idea of what you want, but also be flexible to take what you can get to start, and begin a tenure or a run with an organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. And great advice. I always say, I've been in sales my whole life. So I always pretend that I'm only 25 no's away from getting what I want. That's why when I get rejected, I'm closer to what I want, and I get more excited the more no's that I get. So great advice there. Sorry for skipping you as well. Anyway, Michael, real quick, what advice do you have? Because we want to have a little 5-minute session of Q&A. What advice do you have for everyone in high school getting or trying to get involved in the career in sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think students today have, an unlimited Rolodex right in front of them, and, leveraging social media to interact with executives and influencers within the space that they want to explore. I mean, I barely had LinkedIn in college, and Twitter and Facebook. I can't even imagine the accessibility of a kid wanting to interact with somebody at Nike or somebody with the Clippers or somebody at Overtime. It's literally a click away. And I think today's industry professionals, especially during this very uncertain landscape, are so much more willing and open to help out the next generation. And, I mentioned I went to USC. I'm a very biased alum. If I get any communication from a Trojan, whether it's a DM, a LinkedIn, a text, a tweet, whatever it is, I'm always going to respond. And I think that sentiment, especially in these times, is very consistent across the industry, across every school, across every function. So I think, reach out. Industry executives love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about what they do. And I think the Rolodex in front of you is just a click away. So leverage the heck out of that while you can.
That's great advice. And when I was a kid, there was no cell phones or internets. The best you could do is get your dad's card game or a golf group. About 4 people is all I could reach when I asked for help. So please, everyone, ask for help. People like Michael and Anna and Scott, everyone, Bo, we're all out here wanting to help you. It makes us feel good. You're elevating our stature. So real quickly, Anna, before we get to some Q&A, why don't you give us your best piece of advice for the high school kids?
Yeah, I think just to echo what's been shared, I would say reach out and ask questions. And then once you do that, continue to show up. So I think one thing that people often do is they'll reach out and want to have an informational, and like Michael said, I'm always happy to speak to folks. I talk to folks probably twice a week now, just with LinkedIn and responding to inquiries from people. But once you do that and you get that information, keep checking in, because people will remember you and will be more than likely to help you, to assist you. And I think when I was kind of going through this process, I didn't always have one person that I could go to, a mentor. And I really recommend developing those relationships now, because we are just as invested in your success as you are if you're able to build that relationship. So I would just say, don't be shy, reach out, and then continue that connection after that initial conversation.
This is really extraordinary advice from everyone, because I think people think a lot of times that they go through the motions. They send out resumes with no follow-up, or they have that informational interview with no follow-up. What, the 5 things that we look for, number one, just credibility. Make sure that you're credible in what you're asking, that it's not obvious. I see a lot of people just going through the motions. And so, be credible, try to make an emotional connection with the person that you're talking to, as you suggest, by following up. And then try to quantify the reasons, impacts, and capabilities you have today, and be open and honest. Anna, while I have you here real quickly, any quick tips on the interviewing process of what you look for when you're interviewing someone?
Yeah, for me, it's all about authenticity. So I think when you go into an interview, be yourself. You should be prepared. You should know something about the organization that you're interviewing for, perhaps the person that you're interviewing with, and be able to articulate how you will be able to add value to that team based on your research and also based on a knowledge of who you are and what your skill set is and what your strengths are. But I always like to approach interviews as conversations. If you're going to have that role, you're going to be working with each other probably more than you see your friends and your family. So it's important to show up as you are. I'm a big proponent of that. I think it's great to be prepared, but not rehearsed. So know what you want to communicate, but show up as you are. And if you have that genuine connection, if it's the right thing for you, it'll work out. And then one other thing I would say is we sometimes view interview processes as our opportunity to prove ourselves to organizations. And that's certainly a part of it, but it's also your opportunity to make sure that this is a place that you want to work. So ask those questions. If core values are important to you, ask about them. If there's projects that you think you might want to work on, ask about how the culture is there at the organization, because it really is a symbiotic process and you need to feel out the organization as much as they need to feel you out. So those are my tips.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm gonna skip to Scott because I shortchanged him in the process. So Scott, can you give us some career advice on interviewing as well?
Yeah, I'll actually take a step before that and just note, make sure you spend some good time on your resume and it's formatted right, it looks good, it's not too long. I've seen resumes that are 3 pages and they're right out of school. And my resume after 15 years in the industry is still 1 page. So that's an important part of it, because when a job is posted, like at the Clippers, within a day we have 3,000 applicants. So the first thing we do is just scan formatting on resumes to make sure it looks good. So that's one thing I want to emphasize, is just spend some time on your resume.
I think that's really important as well. Just to check, if anyone does have a question, we have time for one question here. We didn't see any in there, so I went back to Scott, give him a little bit more face time, leveraging his expertise. If not, I'll go back onto Bo real quick and see if he has some resume advice or interviewing advice. Anyone have a question there? All right, we can go real quick. We got 3 minutes, 2 minutes. Bo, maybe you have a few tidbits of advice on interviewing or resumes, or?
Yeah, I think the resume thing is always a struggle, to be honest with you, for everyone. So I think just continue to gain guidance and try to make sure that thing speaks as authentically to who you are as possible without trying to be phony. And I think the other part about the interview is, to Anna's point, I think the way I've always looked at interviews is, yes, they're interviewing me, but I'm interviewing them to make sure the values and like my core beliefs align, or their core values and beliefs align with kind of who I am as a person. So I think a lot of people don't come equipped with some of those questions that are necessary to dive into some of that information and investigate. So make sure you go to an interview. It's 50-50 proposition. They're going to interview you and you're going to interview them. That's the way it works the best.
That's beautiful. And I do suggest everybody take inventory of your values every day, personal, experiential, giving and receiving, and, really know yourself. Don't be afraid of changing and growing. And, all of us, and I didn't get to Michael there, but I promise you, we have changed our minds from when we were in high school, probably 10 to 100 times. As you learn exactly what it means to work in sports, what certain positions mean. I mean, I wanted to be a doctor when I was in high school, and I didn't even know doctors. I want to be a sports doctor. I didn't know doctors had to be in hospitals. My older brother, who's a doctor, looked at me when I was pre-med going, doctors, sports doctors have to be in hospitals a lot. So be more interested than interesting. Last piece of advice as we hand it over real quickly, be kind. Right? This is a very small industry. You can tell by all the people here, we have 1 degree of separation at most from each other. It's a very small industry. So my best piece of advice is always be kind to your future self. Do good deeds, treat people well, and it will come back to you. People will open doors, help you out if you take the same attitude. So be kind to your future self and do good deeds, and you will be successful in any industry, especially in the industry of sports. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much, Bo, Mike, Scott, and Anna. You guys were incredible. I'm going to hand it back off. Enjoy the careers in sports.